I have always been a fan of the lobster. Seeing them hanging around in the tanks at the lobster pound, I was always intrigued. Strange-looking things with ominous claws. Didn't know much about them at the time and knew that the chances of eating one were pretty slim, as they were always the most expensive thing on the menu, usually market price, whatever that means. As an adult, the little darlings were still too expensive for the food budget, but my interest in them never waned. So it came to pass that just before I retired from the Navy, my dad asked me if I would like to have his 14-foot aluminum fishing boat. Soon after becoming a yacht owner, my dad passed away, and his boat with the 4-horse motor and the trailer were mine. Now, I got the boat and the trailer registered, and there it sat until one day a friend retiring when I did suggested we start lobstering. And I said, "What a great idea, but how do you do that?" Now, we generally knew that Narragansett Bay was full of lobsters and lobstermen. Now, Mike and I got 5-pot recreational licenses, scrounged around for some old pots, picked a color for our buoys, and set out putting pots into the bay. Now, we launched from the naval base ramp in Newport and put our pots around Rose Island, which is a short trip from the base. And so we learned how to catch lobsters while avoiding making the commercial lobstermen unhappy. Now, it took a while, but the commercial guys finally figured out we were not going away, so they stopped trying to get rid of us. We were doing single pots. The commercial guys run a long string of pots going north and south. Now, we made sure we did not cross their lines. And we caught lobsters because in the mid-1990s, they were abundant. We caught so many, we couldn't eat them all. We needed a commercial license to be able to sell our extras. In those days, anyone could get a commercial license. Not so anymore. Now we could sell our catch to friends and fish markets. Now, by this time, we had learned how to be pretty good lobstermen. Knew the equipment, where to put the pots, the process for catching and finding a market. We got into it beyond the hobby stage, and it became work. Ouch! And my lovely wife wasn't happy with the smell of the dead fish bait lingering about our yard. So we stopped lobstering in 1997 at the very moment when things started going south for the lobster industry in Rhode Island. In 1999, the Rhode Island lobster industry generated $30 million in profits, employing 425 fishermen. 4 years later, the numbers dropped to 16.7 million with only 279 fishing, and things are getting worse. The lobsters in Long Island Sound, Connecticut, and Rhode Island are disappearing, and those remaining are fighting off a shell disease, epizooty. Shell disease discolors and erodes the shell, making the lobsters less marketable. This problem persists today and is still not completely understood. Now, there are lots of theories about why the lobster population has gone down in Rhode Island and why the Maine lobster population has risen to historic levels. The Maine folks have doubled their take since the 1990s. How come? Well, some think it is the change in the water temperature. The Native American lobster likes cold water. Now, our sea temperature in Rhode Island has risen enough to affect the habitat. The relatively colder waters of Maine seem to be doing fine. Maine lobstermen have landed over 100 million pounds each of the last 4 years. So while the lobster industry in New York, Connecticut, and Rhode Island is dying, the folks to the north are thriving. Of course, managing any fishery is difficult. We all know the cod of old are not there anymore. I guess that's good for the lobsters, as cod ate a lot of lobsters. But while the cod were going away, the sea bass showed up to take their place. Sea bass and striped bass love lobster. It's amazing that any lobsters make it to the market, as their life cycle makes them easy prey up to the point when they get big enough to fight back. And of course, they do get big. Not all big as the colonial days when 40-pound giants were caught. Actually, nobody wanted them in those days, so they lived long lives. Some people believe that lobsters can live to be 100 years old. They were so plentiful in the 1600s that they were used for fertilizer. Now, Mike, my friend, and I caught lots of lobsters from my little boat. Shoulder and arm muscles built up as we pulled up those heavy wooden pots from 50 feet down. Not always. Sometimes there were 10 or more lobsters in a single pot. Not all keepers, of course. Now, we never did catch any lobsters that were not the standard greenish-brown color. Of course, the chances of catching a blue lobster are 1 in 2 million. An orange one, 1 in 10 million. A yellow or an orange-black calico is 1 in 30 million. Split colors right down the middle, 1 in 50 million. And the really rare white lobster is 1 in 100 million opportunity. So it is unfortunate that the lobster industry in Rhode Island will probably never return to the high water mark. The little darlings are still out there, and we still have the intrepid folks on the water pulling up their pots the same way it has been done for centuries, one pot at a time. But it'll never be the same as the good old days. Thank you for watching, and God bless.